in an unprecedented achievement, India has secured an exemption for Indian workers who are temporarily in the UK and their employers from paying social security contributions in the UK for a period of 3 years under the Double Contribution Convention. This will make Indian service providers significantly more competitive in the UK.
James O'Brien today pointed out that the British public want to improve public services, but then we can't agree on how that is paid for. Having decided to do Brexit, which always meant destroying our economy or significantly damaging it, it always inevitably meant there would be less money available for public services. But because Brexit was sold on a bed of lies, and a number of people who believed in Brexit believed that Brexit was going to stimulate growth and then mean better public services. But unfortunately, since Brexit's happened, there's been no real politician that stood up and said this, because it's only seen as a Brexit betrayal over and over again. And no politician is actually saying, well, this is what we said would happen. And what is happening thanks to Brexit is more or less what was predicted to happen.
But what we have in this country is a carefully cultivated conundrum wherein people want Scandinavian levels of public spending and American levels of taxation. So we want the world, we just don't want to pay for it, and we think somebody else should. And that's why immigration is such a successful tool for the kind of tools who make this point, who claim that we can bring you the world, we can deliver. Massive improvement. We just need to get rid of all the foreigners. It's so fundamentally and obviously dishonest, but it's incredibly seductive, as recent events have proved, on both sides of the Atlantic.
But it beggars belief that the chief architect of Brexit, Nigel Farage, who's gone on about it for decades, is somehow benefiting from these sore feelings and these feelings of betrayal, in that he's making out it's all everybody else's fault when it was him. And it's like something out of Wacky Races, that it was him that persuaded the Conservatives to do a referendum on Europe in the first place. It was him that pushed that the NHS would benefit from Brexit because you wouldn't have to pay membership fees and it would go to the NHS, which was he admitted. And it's gone on and on and on. And this has been helped by Keir Starmer's timidity and his cowardice, or his sheer determination to do Brexit because he believes in Brexit. We don't really know what the answer to that is. We know that he's really passionate about the Brexit red lines. Today, a deal with India was agreed, and that has made the Brexiteers absolutely livid, because it means visas for Indians to come in and they won't have to pay national insurance. So they're calling this a massive Brexit betrayal. And you just couldn't make it up.
Hang on. This bit here says, in an unprecedented achievement, India has secured an exemption for Indian workers who are temporarily in the UK and their employers from paying social security contributions in the UK for a period of 3 years under the Double Contribution Convention. This will make Indian service providers significantly more competitive in the UK. Huh. Let's do some more digging on this, guys, because I think this could prove to be absolutely voter repellent if it is the case that the government has just signed a trade deal in which they are giving to not just the employees but also the employers of those employees exemptions on paying national insurance. Given that national insurance has just increased for employers in this country, and the tax burden for a lot of workers in this country is only going up. Let's get into because this, I mean, that description of it from the Indian government there says, and their employers from paying social security contributions.
On the weekend, on Times Radio, Nigel Farage's former comms person was interviewed, and he claims that Brexit is still a massive live issue for their voter base. And he is almost taunting the Labour Party. he's saying, yes, get involved in it, it will help us.
One of the other things about this election, which I think is very important going forward, is that I think in one of the saliences, that Luke can correct me if I'm wrong, for people who vote for reform, Brexit is still very important. And I think this is... We had the 2013, we had the referendum, we had the election in 2019, we had the election in 2017. These were all Brexit elections. Now, we've been told that Brexit has ceased to be a salient issue. We're just about to see the government, on the 19th of May, sign up to a reset. If they want the red wall back, maybe they should reconsider what they're up to.
Gawain made the point that a lot of people who are now coming towards reform, at their heart, were Leave voters, and they still do care about Brexit. And that's something that actually John Curtis said to me yesterday as well. Luke, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I would say that Brexit is sort of a middle tier issue for reform voters. So we were talking before about net zero. That's relatively low on the list. Immigration is much higher. Brexit comes somewhere in the middle. And I think what it is there's quite a widespread agreement amongst both Leavers and Remainers that Brexit hasn't worked in the way that for Leavers they would have liked it to have worked. But they very often blame that on politicians for hashing it up, for not getting a good deal on Brexit. Where I think, when we speak to people quite a lot about this, and they generally have to be prompted to bring Brexit up. Now it doesn't come up automatically like it might have done.
Okay, but in that, what about this question? I mean, Gawain and I were just discussing this during the break. So, like, I've had lots of messages from you can imagine there's a lot of soul searching going on in Labour ranks, Luke. I'm sure you've been speaking with people as well. And I've had a lot of Labour people saying, right, we've got to... because everything's so difficult, and if we want to improve economic growth, we've got to rejoin the EU now, and it's not an issue anymore. Gawain is absolutely shaking his head at this, because Gawain, you think if Labour did that, they've got no chance of winning next election. That's what you think.
Basically, if you do that, if the Labour Party goes hell for leather when it comes to rejoining the EU, and I've heard these siren voices, I cannot see how that improves the economy. I really can't. It's a shrinking, bureaucratic, sclerotic crowd. Plus, at national level in Europe, you're seeing the rise of populism like you haven't seen here.
Part that. Talk about the UK politics of that, because that's your view. There's other views.
But the point is the people, and Luke's just said it's mid-ranking. But if you threaten it, it goes up. And people did vote to do something. They do feel that the then government failed to capitalise on the opportunities available. And if you turn round to the people, particularly the Red Wall people that Labour desperately need, and are clearly, from the evidence of this week, very much minded to come to reform, then you're turning around to them and saying, you know what, you said this, we ignored you, and now we're going to stiff you. It's not a good look, and it will not go down well.
So there's lots of people who totally take your view. There are other people within Labour ranks saying, well, hang on a minute, that's reform. We've also got elections in London coming up. Mm-hmm. We've got elections in Scotland and Wales, although to be fair, in Wales, reform is actually doing pretty,
and it voted to leave.
Well. No, totally. But there is also the Liberal Democrats, the Greens, the Independents, the more metropolitan university areas who will be pushing Keir Starmer to go in the other direction. So what does Labour do? Because they're not just fighting reform, Gawain, they are fighting other parties as well.
It's a very tough gig, that because they've positioned themselves in the way they have, because of the way they've started governing, which seems to be very much focused on public sector unions and not focused on anybody else. They seem to have attacked a whole bunch of people that thought they were on their side, pensioners with the winter fuel allowances you were discussing earlier. It's a very, very tough gig.
Do you think Morgan McSweeney has to pick a side?
I think Morgan McSweeney gets it. I think Morgan McSweeney cut his teeth in Hartlepool losing that by-election, realising that the old-fashioned, what used to be the Labour base, doesn't like that side of things from Labour. And they have to decide. Is the threat greater? How many votes can they get? Where are the votes going to lose? Where are they leaching and losing votes? And where can they shore it up?
Okay.
Now, if you move to that let's go gung-ho for Europe, fine, that's your call. But I tell you this, we'll love it.
Okay, Luke, what do you think about that?
But I think this is a false flag, because for Nigel Farage, having to talk about Brexit means he has to defend it, and he's also got to put up ideas about how he can make Brexit work, because no one's actually asked him that. How is he going to make Brexit work? You know, Brexit can't work. Brexit can only work by doing inferior trade deals, which will never replace the lost trade that we had with the EU, and it means causing more problems from us, particularly for food security, and becoming reliant on countries on the other side of the world for food is setting us up for disaster if there was war or more climate breakdown, and those countries have to protect their food exports. It's leaving Britain in a very insecure position. And nobody has sat down with Nigel Farage and actually asked him these questions. Now is the time to do that. So I think that Gerwain's interview is really wanting the Labour Party to be fearful of going ahead with the Brexit reset, which will expose them, the Reform Party, because they will have to try and give an idea about what they would do that is different.
Okay, Luke, what do you think about that?
I think that might be a little bit binary of a way of looking at it, because I totally agree that I do not think there is scope for this Labour government to propose rejoining. I think it's been said those voters in the Red Wall would say what you're saying, our decision wasn't legitimate. But more than that, people just don't want to go back to Brexit rows. They don't want to talk about it all the time like they were before. Where I do think there's scope, and you could probably get quite a big coalition, including some reform voters, is let's have a good relationship with Europe, let's have a better relationship with Europe. And we do know that on things like, for instance, youth mobility schemes, like we have with other countries, there is more appetite and support, even from more socially conservative voters there. So I think I think the sweet spot is a better relationship, but certainly not jumping back in.
Okay.
Keir Starmer made such a massive mistake by going into the election with Brexit red lines, which really hamper his progress in terms of getting growth. And that is why he's in such a bind. He would be much better off to erase the red lines, get growth back, get trade back with the European Union, and then Nigel Farage will have less to moan about.